Why did you launch him 80 feet in the air?
You told me to boat flip him!
I didn't tell you to launch him 78 feet in the air.
I flipped him in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it! You said boat flip him!
Oh, yeah.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never, disappointed out here because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing today? We are here live at the Augusta County Fishing Show and Expo Boogaloo. We are at part 2 of day 1. It's been an absolutely fantastic event. Tons of great vendors, tons of great guests, and we're going to be keeping this rolling with our next segment, which is really just Fishing 101 and story time, where we're going to have a bunch of people coming on the show today and tomorrow. Now that we've actually gone through all the vendors and we've actually been able to do a little sample, a little snippet of the people that are here, now we're going to get a little bit more in depth. And we have a fantastic individual on here to just kind of give us the backdrop of fishing in this area. If you'd like, introduce yourself, sir, if you don't mind.
I'm Randy Hayden. I'm in Augusta County Bass.
Randy.
People call me Randy.
Randy, how did you get involved in the industry, and how did you get started?
I started bass fishing when I was probably about 18 with Augusta County Bassmasters in Waynesboro, Virginia.
Oh, wow.
The club that Chris Dillo was in. And then I moved from there to Rockingham Bass Anglers. And then from there I went to Augusta County Bass. And that's where I've been for 15 years now.
What got you involved in it?
Mainly fishing, having a grandfather that took me out fishing ponds and got me addicted to doing a lot of river fishing. And then I had friends of mine that were saying, you can catch a fish, come on and join the club. And then I got into fishing as a non-boater in the BFL, and I learned a lot from a lot of people. I fished with Jacob Brosnick on the back of his boat.
Oh, wow.
And a couple other people, not the real big names, but Jacob's just one that's made it big, that I really was impressed with him, learning stuff from him.
What about him impressed you?
It's just his little tips and techniques of taking a bait and changing it, and maybe adding a little color to it, maybe shaving some of it off, cutting some legs off, making it swim better in the water, and just watching how much of a fishing machine he really is. I mean, he if it's one fish in an area, he's gonna catch it. Mm-hmm. I mean, he caught numerous keepers that day and made me kind of look like I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, he's a really good guy,
And then really cutting to the fishing opportunities here, when I think of the Shenandoah Valley, you don't have a Lake Anna necessarily, a Smith Mountain Lake, so I mean, generally, when you start doing club tournaments in this area, what places come to mind? Like, where do you guys go fishing?
We usually start the year off with a Lake Moomaw tournament, and then as it warms up, we'll hit Chickahominy River with James, Lake Chesney, Crater Lake, Smith Mountain is a big one. We have a big classic there every year at the end of the year. We have 100% payout in our club.
Wow.
And we have I would say somewhere between 35 and 40 boats with 2 members per boat, 2 team members per boat, and fishing teams.
That to me is absolutely insane.
Yeah, so you can win some good money as a weekend angler. We kind of call it a weekend pro, kind of, just for giggles, just because this club is made up more of just trying to get the weekend anglers to have a good competitive place to go and have a good time. And I think all of us consider each other brothers. You know, we're all in that fishing scene.
And it's interesting that you brought up Lake Moomaw. I mean, it's a place that if you're not from the area, I don't think people even know that exists. If you had to describe it to somebody, is it like a tidal place that's grassy and shallow? Is it deep and clear? Like, generally speaking, what is that place like?
This lake is deep and clear, rocky. It has smallmouth and largemouth in it. It's a good live scope type lake, but the fish are a little bit more spooky. You know, they're not as easy to catch as, say, you go to Moomaw and you can, you know, fish around, catch a bunch of fish. The water's really cold. It's spring fed, and if you can get on the fish, you'll catch them. And there's also down toward the river, there is some grass that comes in early in the spring. There's been times when there's been a few pads on that lake down in the river. It's a really good place to go. And as it warms up a little bit, it gets even better. But it is a cold water. Usually our first tournament is somewhere in the 30s, 40s.
Wow.
And it's pretty cold, you know, but you can go around that lake and fish drop shots and jigs and top water baits and catch fish, you know, like stunner, jerk baits and stuff like that.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, there was a really good bag caught out of there a couple years ago. I think it was like 20 pounds plus of just largemouth. What are some of the bigger bags that you've seen come out of that place?
Years ago, I've seen some 18 and 20 pound bags come out of there during the spawn. Those fish down there are not like, they're harder to find when they're spawning because sometimes they'll get in these grass patches and they'll get in a little opening in some of the shallower areas, like at the beach area down around that area. But a lot of the bigger fish come up when they start getting ready to spawn, and they get in those areas. If you can get on them, you can catch some nice bags out of there. And that, you know, 18 to 20 pound bag is a really good bag for there.
20 pound bag is impressive.
Oh
Wow.
yes, down there, yes, it is. It's really impressive bag.
What's your biggest smallmouth you've seen come out of there?
I've seen a few 5s, 4.5, 5 pounders come out of there. And
Wow.
I'm sure there's bigger ones in there, but they're probably pretty smart.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I mean, rarely do you ever catch like the biggest fish. That's so freaking cool to me. So a couple more things really to hit on is there was a John Boat Club that was kind of mentioned beforehand. Could you talk about that at all, or how that all got going?
Years ago when we first started, it was called Augusta County Bass Johns, and it was mainly for people that couldn't afford to have a big boat, and they had a smaller boat with maybe electric trolling motor on it or whatever. That's how this thing started, with being able to get more people into fishing that couldn't really afford to have all the big stuff. And within years to come, we just started evolving more into where just about everybody that fished with us had a bigger boat, you know. So we kind of changed it from being we still accept people no matter what size boat they have. They can have a trolling motor, they can fish out of a John boat, they can fish out of a 40 horsepower, or if they have a 225, they can fish. And if there are people that don't have a big boat, they can also team up with somebody or try to get with somebody as a partner that has a bigger boat. But you don't have to have that to fish with us. We accept anybody, kids of all ages. if there's a young kid that's just getting into it and he wants to join and try to get with some of us, we'll teach him what he needs to know on the back of the boat. I mean, we cater to all fishermen. It didn't matter. Even if you don't have a boat, if you want to join the club, you can join the club just to help out with things like this. This fishing expo has really got big throughout the years. And this weekend, we're here at Fishersville Expo from 9 to 5 on Saturday, and I think 9 to maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, 9 to 3, 9 to
9
something
to 3
like that,
or something like that on Sunday. This expo has a little bit of everything to offer, and I don't think you're going to come in here and not find what you're looking for, because there's everything in this building. We have hand-painted crankbaits, spinnerbaits, handmade spinnerbaits. There's food, there's pickles that are being sold in here, gallons of pickles. There's rod makers. We have a guy in our club that makes rods, copper rods. We have a lot of the top name baits you can find in this building, from a drop shot worm to a big hand-painted crankbait to a bull shad. I mean, a big swim bait. I mean, we have a little bit of everything in this building, and if you need it, it's probably here, or we can probably put you on it. Somebody that's got it. Somebody that, you know, that really does a good job with baits.
We got a question here from Big D TV. And then, guys, what we're going to do here is the guy who asked the best question will win a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. So please like, subscribe, and share. If you share it, it actually helps push it in the algorithm. Are you guys selling any kayaks, or are there any kayak vendors here? So, are there any kayak vendors here?
Yes, there is. There's kayak vendors here. Can't remember what the name of the vendors are, but they sell quite a few. I know in the past years we've seen people leaving with kayaks, and they're completely set up. They'll sell them to you plain with nothing on them, and they'll also sell them to you that are completely set up with trolling motor and seats and everything on it you need.
Yeah, and we did see a couple of, I think it's Bonafide that's here,
Yes.
Big D, to just let you know. But yeah, there are kayak vendors here. There's a ton of bait makers here. We have River Rocks, which is an extremely, that's a brand people absolutely love, is River Rocks. What is a place down here that people, besides like Moomaw, could you give, and we'll make sure, guys, again, please come on down to this show. It's absolutely a blast. What's a lake down here that people don't think about, or a pond, or something that you guys fish some of your John boat tournaments out of? It's a little it's unique.
Well, you can go to the rivers like Egypt's Bend, Middle River.
Middle River?
Yeah, Middle River. You can put a kayak in Middle River and catch smallmouth all day long.
What's Middle River?
It goes through the Verona area up through New Hope, Virginia.
Oh, wow.
There's a couple places across the mountain that you can fish. I've drawn a blank, but
yeah, but Middle River, you have the Shenandoah here. You got so many places like Egypt's Bend, of course, which is a little north of here.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I'd have for you is
Beaver Creek Lake.
Beaver Creek Lake. That's a good one.
Yeah, and Albemarle Lake. Both of them are really good places to put your kayak on and go out and fish.
Could the Shenandoah Valley ever actually have a bigger lake? Was there ever a thought of putting a bigger lake in this area?
I don't know if anybody ever thought about that. It would have to. I'm sure that if somebody decided that had a lot of finances and money that they could come up with something, it would be great. I mean, because we have to travel.
Okay, how about this? You just discovered oil on your property. Money's no problem. Where would you put a lake in? If you could, money's no object now. You got it all.
I think I would probably try to put one in between Harrisonburg and Augusta County. right between those two areas.
That'd be pretty good. That'd be
And
pretty awesome.
Find a deep valley where you could put, you know, a good one that had a lot of wood and a lot of
Because it's
everything.
the perfect place for, like, I've lived in Winchester and Loudoun County, and I've driven up and down 81 so many times I lost count. I'm like, this is a place where it's like we're missing a lake. It feels like we're just one lake away in this area.
Yeah.
That could just, it would just solidify it as, and because people ask me, like, where would you rank Virginia when it comes to fishing in general? And I keep telling people, I think we're one big lake away from kind of being in the subject, but there's just this weird, you have Smith Mountain Lake and Lake Anna, and then you have the tidal Potomac, and then you have this vast area of nothingness. No offense, everyone. I know there's a lot of trout fishing and stuff here, but I feel like this is an area where it's not developed yet to the point of like Loudoun County where you really can't put a lake in anymore. Here would be a great place to put in, and I'm not talking 100,000 acres, like a Claytor Lake size, just something like that you can fire up the big engine would be so nice.
Yeah, that would be great because we have to travel, you know, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, just about any good lake you want to go to. You know, Anna, you've got, this year I think we're going to go to Gaston, and we'll probably go to Bugs. And we've put some of those bigger lakes on our schedule to try them out. We usually stayed away from that and tried to make everything cost efficient for people that really didn't have a whole lot of money, you know, that couldn't do that kind of traveling. But we're going to venture out this year a little bit, and I think we're even going to go on the Potomac this year. So,
how far is like Smith and Claytor, like Claytor Lake example? Because Claytor Lake's right off 81. How far is Claytor Lake compared to Lake Anna? Is Lake Anna closer?
Lake Anna, it takes about an hour and 40 some minutes to 2 hours, depending. Depending on where you live at. You can get to Claytor in about probably an hour, a little over an hour, maybe under an hour. Just depends on how fast you're going. But I think pretty much just about anywhere you go around here, if you want to fish a bigger body of water, it's going to be about an hour to hour and a half travel. And the bigger lakes, maybe up to 2 hours. And I think Potomac's probably about 3 hours from here. Yeah, so.
Is there anything in West Virginia?
Not.
Yongahili, but I think that's up more, isn't it?
Yeah. I've never been to West Virginia fishing any of those places other than maybe the rivers.
That's true.
You know,
yeah, so many
a
rivers.
lot of
around
good
here.
places to fish river-wise, trout-wise in West Virginia, but when it comes to taking your big boat and going out, that's no, you know.
Easy feat.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. It's something where I really hope we see, again, you guys know if you've been on the show a lot, it's something that, Big D TV again, let's fix Lake Frederick. One fish every time I go out there is rough. Yeah, and one issue with Lake Frederick is it's overpressured because it's the only lake in really this gauntlet. It's one of the only lakes up near us. And then, you know, we've talked about the blueback herring ad nauseum. There's not a lot of shallow water cover there combined with the blueback herring, and there's that pelagic bite. Those largemouth there are just swimming around nonstop, eating all the bait that's in the middle of that lake. I think putting another place on the thing would be absolutely awesome. We got another comment here. Have you talked to Kevin Gunn? He's doing a seminar there apparently. Kevin, I have not talked to yet, Matt. That's somebody that we're going to add on the schedule here. It's, again, we're going to be trying to do a bunch of interviews right now as well, not just going booth to booth. So, sir, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that we need to cover before we let you go?
Yeah, y'all, anybody watching, y'all need to come down and check us out. I mean, we'll be here today and tomorrow, all day. If you need anything, it's a $5 admission. The kids get in free. I'm sure there's a lot of people around here that are giving out probably some free stuff. We have raffles. If you're looking for a good show to come to pick up all your fishing needs, this is where you need to be. This is one of the best shows. It is the best show that Augusta County has when it comes to fishing. There's also an assortment of hunting stuff in here, and maybe you might find a few little trinkets that you've been looking for that you can't find, old stuff, you know, old school stuff.
No, absolutely, guys.
But come on down.
This show continues to grow every single year. Please come help promote it. We have another special guest. We have Jared Mounds and Ricky, the man, the myth, the legend, coming on next. We're gonna get a couple other guests on as well. So we're gonna go to a quick 5-minute break here, and we're gonna bring on our next guest. Stay tuned.
did you launch him 80
You
feet in
told
the
me
air?
to boat flip him!
I didn't tell you to launch him 78
I
feet
flipped
in the
him
air.
in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it! You said boat flip him!
Oh, yeah.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here, because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Alrighty, everybody. We are back here live from the Augusta County Fishing Show and Expo. I'm going to move this pole over a little bit, and we're going to tweak this camera just a wee bit because, oh, do you see that right there? That's a trophy. That is a trophy from a big-time winner. We are going to have on a guy who won a Bassmaster Open in Virginia. He's a legend. You just hear him whispering in the wind. Yeah. So what we're going to do is, you don't want to see me at all, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to shut up and get out of here because we're going to have two absolute legends in the sport, Ricky and Jared, just talking fishing. Now, I have the question thing open for Jared so he can see it. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit once I get out of here. Ricky, if you want, you can put these headphones on to hear Jared a little bit better, but he's got such a great voice, you probably don't even need that. So I'll just move that over there. And then there's the question link, and then, yeah, here we go.
I'm not the legend, but I'm going to interview the legend, Ricky. And let's fix Frederick. One fish every time I go there's rough. There's some big ones in Lake Frederick. Ricky, thanks for coming on there. For those that haven't seen, you go back. That's what I love about Fishing the DMV too. The digital, it captures this stuff, so they can go back and actually. Thomas did an interview with you on this Central Open championship as a co-angler, so you can go back and hear all about that. But today I want to talk about two things. I want to finish talking about the Tiger crankbaits, but you just recently got back from an open on Okeechobee, so kind of fill us in on how long did you practice? When did you get down there? What was your practice like? And then take us into the actual tournament.
Well, I got down there on Friday, and the legal practice didn't start on Saturday. And I'm running with a group of guys this year on all three of the Southern Division Opens. Logan Latuso and his dad Robbie and Alan Nail and Bruce from Arkansas. And then there's another guy, Homie, that runs with Logan. So the first day of practice didn't start till Saturday, and we had a cold front come in during practice, and we had a mild cold front come in right before the tournament. And it kind of shut some fish down, but we were catching some fish during practice. So, but no, it's a neat thing to do as a co, because there's a lot of things you can learn from these guys that they're doing with today's new technology, and just seeing how they break down a lake. I mean, day two, I launched with this one guy, and we go out because nobody could go out on the main lake on the first day because of the wind. And we get out there on day two, and I turn around and look back, and I don't see nothing. And I turn around and I look forward, and I see nothing. I mean, you think Okeechobee's not that big till actually you are on it.
Wow.
And, our run was a 40 to 50 minute run, and we were up in the northern section of the lake, and we're putting down at Clewiston at Roland Martin's Marina. And
you were showing us before we came on just the different channels from where you launched and just a lot of the channels too. I mean, when we think of Okeechobee, you see the big circular portion of the lake, the Big O, but all the different channels and just
Canals.
tributaries and canals and things that shoots that, you know, and you said you guys are all running up those, and
Yep.
I guess occasionally some guys are fishing those, but
Yeah, some guys were fishing the canals, but on day one, you know, we're running up these canals, and then these guys are splitting off into these chutes and smaller canals, and then the next thing you know, you pop out and you're on the lake, and then you're going across the lake. You know, these guys, you know, when you go to Okeechobee, the only thing you hear is you have to look at what the wind's doing the day of your tournaments. You know, whether you're going to run the canals or you can go out on the main.
gotcha.
And so, but, you know, there was guys, you know, down in South Bay. I was over in what they call Harney Pond, and I actually got to see Scott Martin's deal go down.
Wow.
Which was kind of wild because, you know, I have Scott Martin on one side of me, and I got Trey Swindell on the other.
That's awesome.
And I'm with a guy from New York, Zach Bocott, and we're not catching fish, but they are. But, you know, eventually we catch some fish. But, no, it's just interesting to see. And then you're around 80 to 90 other boats.
Right.
In one little hole.
Right.
And the courtesy that you see that goes on is just unbelievable.
That's cool.
You know, guys aren't fishing, you know, just because somebody sees somebody catch a fish, everybody don't pick their stuff up and just run over to them because it don't work like that.
Right.
Because these fish are constantly moving. And that Harney Pond area was a spawning area. So
now you guys followed with MLF, right? They were down there what, a week or two before that.
they were there the week before us.
Week before. Now, are you able to pick up any intel from that? Did you watch any of that, or is that any?
Because
Does that,
see, we're you could watch it, but you're not. You know, we're on a cutoff, so
Gotcha.
you can't receive information. But no,
and how much that cutoff is that? A week before, a month before,
A month.
So 1 month before your tournament, you're cut off from gathering any information from anywhere else, any other source.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's a new rule for, I think, this year.
Okay.
They applied that this year. So, but yeah, and there's, you know, it was just an interesting place. It was one of the places that's on my bucket list. And going to Santee Cooper in 2 weeks is also on my bucket list. So, you know, I get to do 2 checks in 1 year.
Now, as a co-angler too, so you drew 2 different boaters each day, right?
Yes.
Day 1 and day 2, and you're only weighing 3 fish each day. But you had some good success, I think, and you had some good fish on.
Yeah.
You actually you say you lost one. You were saying maybe 8 to 10 pounds.
Yeah. On day 2, I was the guy I was with. He went back to the area that he was fishing on day 1, and he had 2 fish for 10 pounds. He had one that was 7.5.
Wow.
And I pretty much lost fish all day on day 2. And that big fish actually probably really hurt me the most. And that's. But after losing my phone in the lake Thursday evening after weigh-in is probably what put me in a tailspin. I mean, when you can't communicate with nobody anymore and you're basically shut off, you go into a slight tailspin. And, you know, it's just, that's what happened to me. You know, I'm thinking, you know, on day 2, I got no phone. You know, I even had to figure out how I was going to contact my day 2 boater to see what was going on, because I got no phone.
Right.
So I was lucky enough to, you know, borrow one of the guys at the house's phone in order to contact my guy. You know,
and part of that conversation too, I'm assuming, like, are you able to get information like they let you know kind of what they're thinking? Because they're the boat, or they're driving, they're going. You're at their mercy where they go. Are you getting an idea of what they're fishing, what style, and kind of set up your day 2 or day 1 each day? You kind of have set up like
they'll let you know basically what they're doing, unless it's something that they're doing that something special they figured out. They don't tell you everything. the boy that I fished with on day 2, you know, I didn't know where we were going on day 1. I know we were running a canal, and we had half the field in front of us barreling down 68 to 70 mile an hour down these canals.
Wow.
And, you know, these guys do it for a living.
Right.
So they don't get up on each other as they're running. They leave room. But, you know, it's just when you're running down these canals and you got 10, 15 boats in a straight line.
Running 60 or 70 mile an hour.
So you're running 60, 70 mile an hour. I mean, plus when you take off, what's cool about bass is they have these drones.
Right.
And I happened to be on day 1, I had a drone follow us for probably a quarter of a mile.
That's cool.
And that drone's just hovering right out in front of us, and the camera's on us.
That's cool.
And that's
pretty
it's
neat.
interesting. I mean, you're
Travis on here, Travis Cyber. What's going on, Travis? He said, this guy was the main reason why I went with the Ionic for my lithium batteries. Love listening to him break down water. And I would admit, yeah, listening to how you break down water and how you fish and your choices. Now, I just thought of another question, too. After going back, because of the bass footage, do you go back and watch it? Do you see, when you're talking about how some guys are catching, some are not, do you do a post after your tournaments, after it's all said and done, or you go back and look and see how they were catching or what they were doing? Does that weigh into anything for you? Not that you might not be there back there for a while, but do you do that kind of post-game type of breakdown?
I mean, after I got home, I watched FS1 to see what the top 10 guys were doing.
Right. And what did you gather from that? Like, if you could go back and do it again, what would you change about? And again, you're at a boater's mercy, but would it be lure selection?
I would definitely. I mean, I can tell you right now, if you're going to Okeechobee anytime soon, within the next month, you better have a gold shiner chatterbait.
Okay.
And you better have some of the new Zoom paddle tail trailers they got coming out.
Zoom paddle tail trailers.
Yeah. Zoom has a new bait coming out that got exposed at Okeechobee. Randall Thorpe was throwing it.
Okay.
He had 5 bags at the start of the tournament. And
No
if
kidding.
you listen to FS1, he said, I started off with 5 bags, and I'm down to my last bag. I only got 2 or 3 left.
Zoom. You're saying Zoom paddle tail.
Yeah, it's a
All right.
Zoom, basically a swim bait style bait, but it's got a paddle tail, and he was putting that on a Z-Man jackhammer gold shiner. And if you watch, that's what he's throwing Saturday morning when he catches those big fish.
Okay.
On FS1.
Got a question here too. Brandon Salas says, is a lipless crankbait effective anymore down in Florida or just chatterbait?
No.
Lipless come into play too?
Rattle traps were being thrown.
Okay.
Your gold with a black back is a good one. If I throw any kind of rattle trap bait, it's going to be a Yozuri. If you fish the Potomac, and you'll find out Yozuri has always been a good rattle trap to throw. And I just picked up 3 one-knockers today. One-knockers are hard to find. So you got to get them when you can.
Gotcha. So let's go on to, so you fished Okeechobee, and what you just mentioned, where's your next stop?
I leave in 2 weeks for Santee Cooper.
Okay.
I've been watching YouTubes, and even though I'm a co, I still study that lake.
Right.
Because, you know, as a co, you don't want to go off and leave something home. Because I'm a type of guy, I'm not going to go to these lakes and travel that far and then spend half my time in a tackle shop looking for something that I have at home.
Right.
So if you watch your YouTubes or stuff like that, you know, you're going to have an idea of basically what you're going to throw. If you watch YouTube and go on, and it's like, you know, I leave in 2 weeks. I've been watching shows of previous years for this upcoming tournament. So I already know basically what I'm probably going to be throwing.
And that brings up an interesting point, too, as a co-angler. And a lot of guys out here listening probably aren't the boaters and just even, you know, regular tournaments. You have to be very selective because you don't have the whole boat as far as storage, rod storage, and then also your tackle storage. And so you've got to be pretty selective in what you bring. And so talk to our viewers a little bit about how do you tackle management, and then how do you break that down as far as going into a tournament as a co-angler?
Yeah, well, during your practice, you want to try multiple different things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a co, you know, if you catch a fish, let's say on a green or a black and blue ultra vibe, you know, flipping it. Well, during practice, you want to take that black and blue off, and you want to try something else, a different color of an ultra vibe. I'm not saying you got to take every one you catch a fish on,
Right.
but you know, you're allowed 6 rods as a co and a certain size tackle bag. And what I do is I'll take empty trays and I'll put multiple things. You know, I'll put crankbaits, or, you know, rattle traps, you know, different chatterbaits. But you know, I'm going to have, in case I break something off, I got to make sure I have one still.
Right.
So, you know, you got to look at that stuff. I put together a little hooks and weights and pegs, you know, different size hooks and all that stuff together, because you can't take, you know, 12 3700 series containers with you.
That's right.
So you got to break it down. You know, even if you take, you know, 10 hooks, you know, 10 weights, you know, bobber stoppers and all that stuff, you know, you have to organize your bag so you have a multiple of things to select from that you know will catch fish.
And I guess during your practice, you're going to get that dialed in. Like you said, you're still looking for variety in case that bite changes. But I guess going into the tournament, you can have, you know, a kind of a set idea of what you're going to be throwing. But again, that could be thrown off depending for you who your boater is and what their style is and what they're going to be fishing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, you could go out and been Texas rigging or throwing a chatterbait all day and get paired with someone that's going to go out here and set on a, you know, way off the bank and throw a Carolina rig.
Right. Yep.
So you got to make sure you got a rod that you can switch to a Carolina rig if you need to.
Or in speed of fishing, you could have been dragging a jig, but they're going to be burning and running and gunning. So that does got to make it tough. You got to be versatile. You got to be able to throw a lot of different things. And
you got to be selective in your rods and your reels on an ideal of speeds and gear ratios of what you got to have.
And you told me that before too, where another strategy you'll have the rods, but you might reel up. You might have different reels with different line size, depending on.
And I'll have them in my bag.
Yes, and you can then quickly just change out the reel, not the whole rod.
Yep, exactly. Because winning this trophy right here, making a reel change that day, because my biggest thing is when I set the hook, I was worm fishing with a 681. Well, these fish were moving so fast I couldn't catch up to them. So I went to a 381, and by making that change is what made me win this trophy.
That's awesome. Travis has got another question here. Fishing the opens, what are some of the most critical, important things that you've learned from fishing these tournaments that you would say to an everyday tournament fisherman?
Courtesy.
Courtesy. Awesome.
Courtesy. You got to know how to have good courtesy. And I see that with these guys on the water. You know, even though you got Scott Martin sitting over here and, you know, whether it be Ike and Nelly or whatever, you still got to give courtesy to each other. And you got to give respect. And, you know, you just want to treat them just like you treat your buddies. Because, you know, for a guy to come back to the dock and say, well, this co ain't worth a heck in my boat, I hope I never get somebody like this again.
Right.
You know, you got to find that happy medium with your boater, because you have to, in order to be good with him, he's going to be good for you. And, you know, he's going to leave you water if you're good. So, you know, that's a lot of it. And, you know, at the end of the day, just like with me, I carry a $50 bill that I give every one of my boaters. Whether I catch fish or not, he's still got an expense. So, I'm not just going to jump in his boat, and just because he's got 50 sponsors on the side of his boat, I'm going to let him know that, I'm here to pay my way. So you get a lot of respect off of that too.
That's a good answer. Courtesy and respect. And I think, we often talk about in competition can bring out the worst in any person as we're competing against each other.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point to where you need to make sure that we respect each other, the anglers. You compete, you go hard, but you also there's boundaries and you respect. That's good to hear. It's cool to hear at that level that happens.
Yeah. Plus, even though I'm in the back of a boat, the way when you talk with these guys, and if they see that you're there learning, they will give you pointers, to help you on stuff, like how setting up your graphs or what they were doing with their transducers, or and then I've asked them questions. Well, why did you do this? Well, here we are on your short day. Why are you locking through on a short day? What's your reason behind that? My thing is I want to get in that pro's head and see how he's thinking.
Right.
Because that's going to help me down the road.
Right. And I've heard you said too in the last one we did how it works. We're working reverse too, where your boater might be like, "Look, I've got nothing. Like day one was just a flop for me. Do you have anything? What do you have?"
Yep.
And that can happen in a given day too, and even not just as in that type of competition. I think in team competition, I think that's so important too, to kind of bounce ideas off of each other, especially when you're looking for something you can't figure it out. Just leaning on each other, to get a tip or a suggestion, or
Gotcha.
Sometimes can, I think, pay dividends.
Yep. And just because you're a co, that don't mean you can't take your boat. See, I took my boat to Ross Barnett.
Gotcha.
And see, I found the spot that we went to on day 2 because my boater had went up the river and didn't have nothing.
Right.
So the spot I had found in practice, just because you're a co, that don't mean you can't take your boat.
Right.
So
yeah, because I always talk about unlocking the puzzle, and it is kind of that you're and each day is different, and so that is a good strategy as well. The more eyes you can have on the water,
yep.
The more intel you're going to be able to bring back or collect,
yep.
or gather.
And just like you were asking about breaking down a lake, and when I break down a lake, this is how I look at a lake. Or I'll take bugs as for example. When I break down a lake, I look to see what time of the year it is and what I think these fish should be doing. If you've got any experience on the water, they're going to be on points, or starting to move back in, or they're in the back of pockets or whatever. And that's what I look at. It's the time of the year. And then a lot of times, you go looking, with the new technology, you can side scan and not even throw a line,
right,
a rod,
right,
just by looking off your graphs. And spending time on the water always is going to help. But that's how normally I look at where I want to go before I get to a lake. Is I look at the time of the year, and I have an idea of what these fish probably should be doing.
Yeah, and I like what Travis said. I agree too. When that podcast you did with us there, that really changed how I looked at things, and just the idea too, where you don't have to run great distances. You can take a different little section of that and just break that down. There's going to be fish in that area.
Oh yeah. I mean, just because you put your boat in one end of the lake don't mean you got to run the other.
Right.
You could go right outside of where you just launched your boat.
That's right.
Pick a pocket and go fishing.
That's right, because those fish are spread out.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk real quick. You got a couple crankbaits. Let's talk about Tiger Crankbaits.
Yeah.
you've been helping them out, and they've been helping you out, and they're custom.
Yep, Tiger Crankbaits.
Out of Richmond. Yeah, we got them.
Is one of my sponsors, and this is the one crankbait right now that Tiger Crankbaits, and I threw these down at Okeechobee, and I caught fish on these. So, and this is the blue crab crankbait, and I tell you, they got it in multiple different crankbaits, you know, to do various things, but this is one that I myself is pushing, and this is Tiger Crankbait's version of the blueback crab, or I'm sorry, the blueback herring.
Mm-hmm.
I throw a lot of crankbaits, and I throw a lot of blueback herring. And if there's a bait that you need, or let's say you have a bait that you have confidence in, and you want a special painting, get with Tiger Crankbaits, and they can put anything you want on a crankbait if they have an idea of what you want. And they are now starting to put a lot of the blueback herring patterns on several different crankbaits, but I'm more of a flat-sided crankbait guy.
Mm-hmm.
I like being able to, I like taking my line and changing sizes. Just like when I was throwing the blue crab down at Okeechobee, I was throwing a similar crankbait like this on 15 and 20 pound test line. And what that was doing was keeping this up in the water column.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't take away from the action, maybe a little bit, but not that much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was noticing. And I was surprised that you could take a pattern designed for the state of Virginia and
Right.
it actually worked. And I
Right.
think I kind of figured it out. I think it had to do with the tannic water,
Okay.
because we have tannic water here.
Right.
And Okeechobee is tannic.
Gotcha. And what you like, the blueback herring, I mean, I bought 3 of those down at the Richmond show because, you know, when you talk about bugs, or like
Yep.
we were just mentioning Big D TV, was talking about Lake Frederick. I mean, that is, you know, matching the hatches, which we hear a lot, and the
Yep.
forage, what they're eating. And that is cool, like you say, about custom paint jobs when you can paint it up based on the forage that those fish are eating. That's got to help.
Yep.
Talk a little bit more about your crankbaits. Like when you think crankbait, what are some things that anglers should be thinking about? The different styles of crankbaits and how they run. Obviously, depth is a factor, but what do you look for in a crankbait?
Well, crankbaits do several different things. Your flat-sided crankbaits run in a tighter pattern when they come through the water. I've noticed, like going down to bugs in March, the spots are usually up, and they will chew up a crankbait if it's to their preference. And I have found that the flat-sided crankbaits run truer, and the spots really like that. I'm not saying, and that's just my opinion, but you know, you can, and that's why I stick with a flat-sided crankbait more, because you know, you can get them nowadays, you know, with just longer lips that'll go deeper, and you still got that small profile body. And I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, that Fritz side has really been popular.
Yep.
It has really taken off, and that's a flat-sided.
Yep.
I know they're getting deeper faster also, but the way they're weighted.
Yep. So
you
yeah.
prefer the flat-sided.
I prefer the flat-sided crankbaits. I'm not saying you know, this bait right here, you know, just because it's not flat-sided. I mean, I have them and I throw them. I mean, this is a good James River, because this represents how that blue crab, you know, swims, and it swims with a wide wobble.
Right.
You know, so that's basically why this is a good crankbait.
Now, what about rattles versus silent?
Well, in cold water, that's why I prefer the flat sides, because most of my flat sides don't have rattles. I'm not a rattle type guy, other than my rattle traps, my Yozuris, you know, on the Potomac, or when I'm throwing rattle traps, I want the rattles. There's also times when one knockers are better than too many rattles.
Right.
But you have to figure that stuff out on the water.
See what the fish want.
Exactly.
And how they want it.
And how, you know, you let the fish dictate how they want it.
Right. What about your square bill versus a regular deep diving bill?
Well,
or rounded bill?
I'm not a deep cranker, so I try to tend to stay away from that, because that's something maybe I should need to practice that more. But the square bill, what I like about it is it comes off cover. You can throw them things in trees. I don't care. You can throw them in junk.
Right.
And they're coming through if you have the right setup.
Right.
So, you know, Square bills can get you a lot of fish. They can get you a lot of extra bites that you're not getting doing something else.
So I'm guessing too, by what you're telling me, you're not in the deep divers. So my next question was going to be depth, but I guess you're probably looking usually generally 5 to 8 foot range is I'm guessing what you're.
Well, I'm going to say probably 10, 0 to 10,
0 to 10,
to 12.
somewhere in there, 0 to 12.
Anything after that, it's easier for me to pick up a Carolina rig or a football jig or, something.
I see what you're
in that
saying.
range, because when you get deeper like that, you can use your electronics, but, I want to feel with a bait what the bottom feels like, and the only way you're going to do that, and this is a good tip for a lot of people that are learning, a Carolina rig, if you drag it slow enough, you will find things that you can't see.
Right.
You can find little depressions.
Right.
Even though you can't see it on a graph, that little depression might make a big difference in whether you get bit or you don't. And a Carolina rig is a good way to search out a point. How it drops off and all that stuff. But now today, you don't have to worry too much about that because you have forward-facing sonar. And, that's just what a lot of people are using today now as another tool in your boat.
Right.
And whether you like it or you hate it or you prefer it to go away, it's not going nowhere.
Right.
I'm around these guys that are using it, and I have nothing against it. I'm familiar with it. I can use it. I'm not really dialed into it as good as a lot of people. I haven't spent enough time doing it. I can do it, but if you don't learn it, you're going to get your teeth knocked in at some of these lakes.
Yeah.
Because if they're forward-facing sonar,
it's like you said earlier, it's a tool. We're learning a lot about fish behavior because of it. And, actually that's a good segue into our next segment, talking about, live imaging and sonar and such. And that's what's coming up next here. Thomas has next interview coming up. So, but Ricky, thank you for, again, coming on and being a Fishing the DMV podcast supporter, and Jake's and Frederick County Bass and the youth and Bass Nation, everything you're doing. So we appreciate you.
Support them kids fishing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ricky.
And then hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? So we're gonna get right here we're gonna keep on cranking out here, guys. So we have our next guest of the afternoon here at day one of the Augusta County Fishing Show and Expo. So we have a really good guest here. So yeah, just tell us who you are and kind of what your background is.
Yeah, I'm Mike Delvisco, and I have been around the bass fishing industry now. This is my 42nd year fishing on tour, and I fished all over the country. I fished Bassmaster. In fact, I started off my fishing career fishing Bassmaster Invitationals back in 1982, so quite a long time ago. I fished those. I fished FLW, I fished the PAA Tour, I fished the Grand Slam Tour, fished Major League Fishing, and this year I'm back to fishing some ABA Top 150 stuff. And over those years, I've really, my specialty has kind of progressed into the sonar. And that's what I do. I do a lot of seminars around the country on sonar technology and how it works, because for the last 40 years, I've grown up using this technology. So I know a lot about it. Teach people about it in seminars all over the country, and that's what I'm doing here at the Augusta Expo.
When we talk about technology, and I'm taking it out of the industry right now, when you talk about AI and like how technology in of itself is just, it's so parabolic, how it's absolutely progressed. And then you take it back to the fishing industry, where I remember when Steve Kennedy really was talking about side scan and how people were so mad, like, oh, this is going to change the sport and everything. Fast forward to now, and we have the forward-facing sonar thing. How did you keep up with all the ups and downs with the technology boom?
It's actually a really good question. So if you remember, if you go back far enough in sonar, you remember a couple of companies. One in particular was Bottom Line. They were a fairly recognizable company. They got bought by Minn Kota. Humminbird Minn Kota bought them. I was on their team, and I helped them develop equipment. It was one of the things I did with them was help them test prototypes, and they actually had the first side finder, was what they called it, side finder. And it only saw fish. It didn't see any structure, just showed you fish like under docks and up under trees and things like that. There was another company called Interphase back in the late 80s, early 90s. And that was a pretty short-lived deal, but I did a similar thing with them. And I do some of that stuff with some of the modern companies now today. So I've been around this stuff long enough where I'm kind of ahead of the learning curve with a lot of different things, you know, forward-facing sonar and some of this new stuff. And, you know, I remember when, you know, Structure Scan came out and everybody, just like Steve Kennedy said, man, it's got to be, you know, it's going to hurt fishing and all this. And, you know, there's just no way stopping this technology. What I've learned is that the more technology you've got doesn't help you catch any more fish unless you know where to go catch a fish. And I stress a lot in the teaching that I do the importance of still understanding where to go catch a fish, how to go catch a fish, and don't overlook those things, because it doesn't matter how many transducers you've got on your boat, you still got to go find them.
Now that's so, you hit it on the head there. It's not just about the technology, it's about how you use it and being able to go find the fish. And you know, I really want to talk about the positives of forward-facing sonar too, because guys, if you want to go listen to Randy Blockett, if you want to hear people complain about it. I know as a person that was really late onto it, last year was the first year in all my tournaments I ran it, and the first thing I realized was this: the amount of information you gain just from reading the screen and knowing, I go to a point, I know within 5 or 6 seconds whether I'm going to stay here or not. And then I thought to myself, man, when I didn't have this, how much time I would spend in dead water. It was insane. And so with that said, like, what are some things that you've picked up with forward-facing sonar and just all the other technologies?
So one of the first things that I learned is that every fish doesn't eat your bait. And I learned that pretty early on. I had Active Target over a year before it ever came out in the market, and did some of the development of that. And, you know, from the very beginning, they don't all eat your bait. And there's certain things that you can do, you know, distance away from the fish and how you make your cast. And there's a lot of presentation stuff that you learn. And you also learn how fish react to other fish. They react to the cover, they react to the bait, how they react from morning versus afternoon versus, you know, midday. You know, they react differently all throughout the day. And this just helps you understand that a little bit. But one thing that I teach, and I think this is really important because not everybody has the forward-facing sonar, 2D sonar is incredibly important to understand how all other sonar works. And the things that you can do on 2D sonar, if you understand how to do it, you can do on live straight down. You just need to understand what things look like and why they look the way they do on your screen. And I've got video of actually seeing fish swim into my 2D screen, me dropping a bait down and catching the fish live on camera. And just understanding what's happening is a really, really big thing.
With all your years of experience, is it now just a gut instinct of when to ignore electronics and go back to just kind of beating the bank, for lack of a better term? Is it a gut experience now, or is it something that because everyone does have technology, there is now a niche for people that want to just go hit docks and things like that? Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I realized too is that, you know, when forward-facing sonar first came out, the deep bite, what it did was it opened up that deep bite to a lot of people who didn't realize that was happening. And I think back, you know, 30 years when we fished invitationals and we didn't have any equipment to go look out deep, we had to use deep diving crankbaits and Carolina rigs and big jigs to get actually stuck in the cover and then triangulate and do all this other stuff to be able to find something offshore. Forward-facing sonar and all that opened up the doors to that for people to be able to look out where fish didn't get bothered. What I'm seeing happen now is that the shallower bite's getting a little better. Some lakes around the country, depending upon when it is, the shallow bite is what I really like. It's my style of fishing. And you can utilize sonar for a lot of that different application too. If you think about
fishing a ditch or a drain or something like that that's really obscure in shallow water, it's no different from applying it to deep water. You're trying to look for isolation out in deep water. I'm trying to look for isolation in shallow water. So if I can use my sonar tools and understand transitions and things like that, I can apply that to shallow too and open up that whole world as well.
Have you always been, I guess, pro electronics? Was there ever a time in your career when you first started out, like, I don't want to get in, like when did you really get like, oh, technology is a thing and that I need to put time into?
I never really thought about that because it's been 4 decades of this stuff. So, we went from, having flashers and, our paper maps on the floor of a boat with plexiglass over them so they wouldn't blow out riding down the lake to, having LCD screens, chart recorders, if you remember that stuff.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And side scan, that was probably 2008, 2009 when that came around.
I think Alton Jones was the first one to really win on that. I think it was a classic at Hartwell, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah. And not many people paid attention to side structure scan back then. It really didn't become a thing until, maybe 7, 8 years later, 6, 7, 8 years later, people started to really pay attention to the technology. And maybe when high school and college fishing started to come around, because I think those are the people that really opened our eyes to the technology to the bigger mass of people, because they were the ones that were into that stuff. And I think that's really helped a lot of people get into fishing too. The technology and says, look, I can do this cool stuff, going out and fish. And, certainly Jacob Wheeler and places and people like that, haven't hurt that either, because they've opened up a whole new people to come in and fish as well.
What did you see really in the circuits in like your most recent touring season, to date, with how the younger generation has absorbed this technology compared to the old guard? Is there a big difference, or is that just a bunch of social media hullabaloo?
Yeah, there's a big difference, and it's really in preparation and pre-fish. And a lot of the younger kids don't even make a cast during practice. They'll spend all day just riding around graphing. I'm going to go graphing today. I really have a hard time. As much as I know about this stuff, I have a hard time doing that. I like to physically, first day of practice, go out and catch some fish first and kind of get a feel for what the fish are doing with my rod and reel, and then applying what I know about sonar to go find some more. And I've done that at a lot of different places, and it just works for me. I fish better and I function better if I've caught a few to kind of ease my mind here a little bit, and then I'll apply the sonar to it.
With that said, why is it the younger generation? What is the strategy in never lifting a rod and reel and just graphing the whole time? I feel like I could find a place, but if I don't know what they're going to bite, is it they just trust their ability in the tournament to figure it out?
Yeah, and maybe they may fish a couple of schools. If they're driving around looking for a school to fish, they may fish one school just a little bit to see how the fish react, and then spend the rest of the day graphing around. But I have a really hard time doing it. If I'm seeing some stuff, I want to go try to catch them, just because that's how I fished for years and years.
I get a lot of questions on my channel, and guys, please check us out. Also, we are on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. And one thing is always about fishing new water. I wanted to pivot around because as a guy that has fished a couple of lakes once or twice, breaking down new water is one thing, but when you have history, how do you go graph a place that you know? Because I feel like that can also have its pitfalls where you're like, well, I've graphed the back of this creek 1,000 times. I've done it for 10 years. And I feel like you get into this trap of, I'm just going to go fish the history. In your mind, how do you keep yourself from falling into that trap and fishing the moment?
Yeah, that's really hard to do. It is. And I've got, this year I'm fishing some different events that I hadn't fished since probably 2007 through maybe 2009 or 10.
Wow.
And it's just lakes that I really like to go to that I've done well over the years. And it's going to be hard for me to really get out there and go fish the way these lakes fish now, because I have no idea. I have not, some of these lakes I haven't made a cast on in, 8 or 9 years. I know how I'm going to start practice, the first day on some of these lakes. I don't know how I'm going to end practice. So, sonar may play a much bigger part in, my preparation for these lakes. In fact, it probably will. The more pressure some of these lakes have got over the years, the patterns and things that I used to do probably won't work anymore, but I'm willing to open my mind and develop it and pretty quick. I'm pretty stubborn to a point, and then there comes to a point where, okay, I'm just absolutely not going to catch one doing this. You can't force feed them stuff, and especially if they're not there. So I need to kind of have an open mind and go for it from there.
What are you running on your boat graph-wise? What is your setup, generally speaking?
So my setup has changed a little bit over the last couple of years. I'm fairly simple now. I used to be, one of these ones that had 5 graphs on your boat, and I've kind of scaled down a little bit.
No electronics now.
Yeah, I've got no
just John Coxing it.
Yeah, I've got on the console. I've got an HDS Pro 10. I like that 10 because it's it still has the screen size of a 12, but it's a little bit lower profile, so I can see over the windshield. Next to that, I have something a little bit. I have a Simrad Go 12. Which is a saltwater unit, but it's got really good. It's almost like an iPad, so it's got no case to it. So it's also 12-inch screen, but a pretty low profile. I use that for CMAP and mapping and stuff like that, and some of the 2D sonar applications. And then I also have at the helm now, I have Active Target 2. So instead of having to get up out of the seat and go up to the front of the boat and scan something, I can do it right from the helm, and I have that on a sniper pole, which is really cool.
I am so glad you brought that up, because I'm seeing more and more people. I think it was at the Toyota I think it was High Rock, is one of those White River Lakes this past fall, where guys were doing that in practice. You just sit there at the console and you want to see where the bait is, just drive past the docks. That's a brilliant idea. It's so brilliant.
Yeah. And that's something that's fairly new. You see a lot of guys that are starting to put their active targets on the transom. But the problem with that is you have to physically drive your boat over the cover, or close to the cover and angle your boat so it sees things. The sniper pole is nice because it has a dial on the handle that I can just turn the dial right, I can turn it left, and my transducer moves. So I can move that transducer any position I want, find my fish, I can save waypoints right from there. And then I can go up front and fish that sort of stuff. And up front, I have Active Target 2 as well, and with an HDS Pro 12 up front. Just one graph up front.
So with the pole, do you have it mounted to where you just put the pole in the water once you get down off plane, or does it stay off the side of the boat the whole time when you're driving? Like, how does that system work?
Yeah, it's actually there's a T-bar on your gunnel, and the bracket fits on the T-bar, and then the sniper pole fits inside the bracket. So when I'm not using it, I just pull it out. I've got it on a clamp, so I can just clamp it down to the back deck, just run to my next spot and go, drop it in. It takes literally 2 seconds. The pole's very small. It's not one of these big long poles that you'd see, up in the front of your boat or on a pontoon boat or something.
It's like a kayak pole.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly what it is. Yeah, it's about 3 foot long.
Now, so then 2 black boxes, I'm not mistaken, for the HD. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
With that? Okay. That's absolutely fascinating to me. So with that said, you mark your fish, you get up to the front. I have had Mr. McCluskey on the show, who, up where I am, he's really big with forward-facing sonar, and he started to mention to me that he thinks that fish are going to start shying away from this. And then I've had a couple other guests on, they're saying it too. Are you seeing that at all, where when you shine the cancer ray on them, that they start flinching? And if so, what are some strategies people can use to not just, drive the boat right up on top of them?
Absolutely, they get alerted to it and they scatter. Now it depends upon the lake. Clearer lakes, it's much more of an issue. A little bit dingier lakes, not so much. Time of year, it makes a little bit of difference. When they're really stupid and hard to catch, you can get close to them. What I find that, when I originally started to use forward, my fishing range would be about 40 feet. Meaning I could cast to about 30 to 40 somewhere and be able to catch those fish. Now it's up there around 45 to 50, maybe 55 feet, where that's kind of the ultimate range where I want to see them. So I might be looking at a piece of structure, whether it's brush or a ditch or a drain or rocks or anything like that, or a drop off at 80-foot range. But then when I get to go fish it, I go drop back to about 60, and ultimately I want to catch them 45 to 50.
When you see some of these boats, where they have. I saw this brand new boat. I think it's from the Hensley or Hershey place down in Alabama where they rigged it out. It had two transducers on the transom facing out. He had, I think, 2 at the front. I think he had a total of like 5. Holy shit! Like, I get it, but is that overkill, or is there a strategy when you have that many transducers on the boat?
I guess there's a strategy because, you're using the ones on the transom for obviously pre-fishing and practice. So whoever's doing that, they're doing a lot of pre-scouting, not a lot of fishing while they're doing practice. So,
okay, gotcha.
they're certainly looking around. But in reality, if you think about this, it's much more a feasible and better thing to have it at the helm, where I can control where I'm looking at where the transducer's looking. The only way you can control the ones in the back, I believe, is if you turn your boat. I don't think there's any kind of directional that you could do. Now Cornfeld is doing of course that's crappie fishing. They're doing a remote steering kind of mechanism for their front active targets or live scopes, things like that. So I haven't gotten into the to the transom mounted ones. I like the one on the helm. It's just much better for me.
I love that idea that you just drop it in and then you can just scout, because I think it's all about being efficient in practice and being able to eliminate water. And I know you're super busy, and I want to make sure I don't take up too much of your time here. When it comes to mounting the live scope transducer up front, the natural way to do it is you put it on your trolling motor or somewhere on the trolling motor, and you control it with your foot pedal. More and more turrets are becoming a thing. They're getting higher in popularity. Humminbird has made their own. Is there some feasibility to the turret? Because I know some people that are like, never use the turret. You just want to have it on the trolling motor. And there are other people that kind of like the turret. Like, what is your thoughts on that?
So I have pros and cons on it. I do not like the electronic, so to speak, turrets. The ones with the, motorized, and you got to use your foot to move it left and right. So it's like I've got my foot running the trolling motor, I got my foot running the turret, and I'm trying to fish at the same time. It's too much for me. And I don't spot lock a whole lot of times when I'm actually trying to fish places, unless it's isolated brush and things like that. I tend to chase the fish a little more out in deeper water when I'm scoping for them. So something that's not for me. But the guys at Sniper actually make a pole that has that can attach to your trolling motor, so that you can control that too with the dial. So you can spot lock on a place and then dial your active target or your live scope in and be able to fix right on that spot, which is nice. It's too many buttons for me to try to turret. And I understand why people want to do it. Absolutely. My style of fishing doesn't lend to that a whole lot.
It's frustrating because I think with the advent of forward-facing sonar, it's really overshadowed the miracle that spot lock was when it came onto the scene. And when I first got it, and this was before live scope became anything, when I got the Ultrex, I was like, oh my God, I fished without this. How did I do that? Like, it was so nice when we went up to Champlain and we're fishing some of these blow guts, these guts in between eyes. You just hit spot lock and I can go down and I can tie a new jig on, and we're still there over 20 feet of water. And it was a miracle technology. And then when people got the forward-facing sonar, we don't use that anymore. And to me, it's like, I understand why, but it's how can we be able to blend both technologies together? Because when I'm fishing on the St. Lawrence or portions of the Susquehanna where I can put my big boat in, it is a pain in the ass to be sitting on that trolling motor all day and you're scoping. I mean, you want a calf workout, guys. That's how you do it there. But I'm not personally 100% sold on it. I've had guys that love the poles, but I'm kind of with you in that camp too. I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
The one last thing before I let you go here. I've mentioned on this show here a couple of times, people that want to get technology. One thing that you can always get is just try to make sure you get a really good antenna for your GPS, so you can always triangulate. And I would love to have someone of your caliber on the show. Is that a fair assessment that external antennas are important, or are we now at a point with technology that you really don't need an external puck for your GPS units to make them really accurate?
Yeah, and for example, Lowrance has a 0.1 GPS, which, you gain more satellites, you get better accuracy, it keeps your maps from spinning around out in the middle of nowhere. So if you're trying to spot lock and your maps are spinning, you don't have a 0.1, you need to have that. It absolutely helps if you want to try to fish isolated cover off the shore. when you were talking about spot lock, and 30 years ago, spot lock for me was a marker buoy. I carried marker buoys with me, and I was always drop them where the boat is. I would have a triangulation of where the cover is, but I was always drop the marker buoy. Once I started to catch fish, drop the buoy where the boat is. That way, when the wind's blowing and you're on your OMC 12-volt trolling motor from 1982, and you blow down the bank 100 miles an hour, you know where to go back to. Get your triangulation, make your cast. Now the cool thing is you can do all that right on your fish finder screen. So you can drop a waypoint where your structure is in one type of icon. You can name that icon, color that icon, so I can separate spots from, stumps from rocks, from boat docks, things like that. And then before I leave the spot, before I pull my trolling motor, I can leave another icon like a stop sign or a cone or something like that, which is different from the structure waypoint, so that when I come back to that spot again, I can stop right there and make my next cast. So there's so many little things that make it so much easier to catch fish and re-catch fish now that it's just amazing.
Sir, I mean, we're gonna try to get him back on the show again when it's not crazy here. We can talk about some other things, because I find this stuff fascinating. Even little things about organizing your GPS units, because they can get cluttered. Like little things like that will help you catch more fish. If people would like to follow you, find you, what do you have coming up, and what social media platforms can we promote? Yeah, so one cool thing I started this year, and I actually have an online sonar course, which is really cool. Social media stuff, Mike Del Visco Fishing, or just Mike Del Visco. But if you want to check the site out and learn a little bit more about sonar, it's get-sonar.com. Have a whole learning platform on there, which is really cool, and you guys can learn more about that stuff. Sir, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Guys, again, we're live from Richmond. My apologies. I'm having a stroke today. The Augusta County Fishing Show and Expo. Been a long day so far. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come up with our last cast of the evening before we shut down for the day. We'll see you guys later.
launch him 80
You
feet in
told
the
me
air.
to boat flip him.
I didn't tell you to launch him 78
I
feet
flipped
in the
him
air.
in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it. You said boat flip him.
Oh, yeah.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here. Because I don't expect anything. Because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you. Why did you launch him 80
You
feet in
told
the
me
air?
to boat flip him.
I didn't tell you to launch him 78
I
feet
flipped
in
him
the air.
in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it. You said boat flip him.
Oh, yeah.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here. Because I don't expect anything. Because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
All right, guys, we are here. I'm sorry I kept that thing going a little bit too long, that intro. Please, if you guys would like me to get a new intro, 100%. I don't know why this aperture is right. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on. I didn't realize this. We got a moment here to be calm, and I realized the aperture on this makes me look like Jesus. It's just glowing so much. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah. Oh, crap. I'm doing this without seeing. Look at that. There we go. Now the aperture doesn't look so bad. No, I feel like I don't know if I just adjusted the aperture or if I just made the camera slow motion.
Can we all just take a shot every single time Thomas says the word aperture?
You know what? I do know a couple of words. All right. So without further ado, the sassy one that, does shit for the company, there she is. The bird is the word.
Sassy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
See, what's so nice about this board is I can do sound effects so we can have her cheer in the background. I love how after everything we talked about, the one that did the best so far analytic-wise was not even me. It was just Jared and Ricky talking.
Yeah.
They were the ones that did the best on the show so far, which is absolutely hilarious. So, Carly, how you been?
Been pretty good. Working hard. Hardly working. All of that.
You're working extremely hard. I mean, bouncing through here and stuff. And guys, we came so close. We were only a couple likes away from her getting the kayak. We'll try again tomorrow for trying to get the kayak as well.
We will.
Why not? We'll try again. That's fine. Maybe people will know.
25 likes.
Yeah, 25 likes, and we can get you a kayak.
During one stream.
It's actually one stream.
Right.
That's the thing. It has to be and somebody mentioned this.
I know.
It doesn't count if that thing gets up to the amount of likes tomorrow, because it will. It has to be during the stream that it somehow gets there. So we had and what I'm gonna try to do tomorrow also is keep the stream going all day. One thing I keep telling myself with these is I always feel like these streams are organized. They're getting more organized. Each time we do these things, we get a little bit more organized, a little bit more proficient, a little bit easier. But the one thing I struggle with is when you have getting all the guests lined up so we can keep one stream going the whole time and not shutting it down. Because it's just a little behind the scenes of YouTube magic. The first stream of any of these things is usually the best. So the first one today, I think we had like 40 people watching around there, and it'll trickle off as the day goes on. But when you cut that stream off and start a new one, it's really hard to ever gain back the same amount of viewers because you kind of gain momentum with it. The problem is I usually have to stop because I don't have a guest lined up and we just went booth to booth. So the next time we do this, especially with Richmond, Raleigh, everything next year, we'll have it more organized. We're like, okay, we're going to do this at this time. And then we just segue into some guests and stuff. And then we'll just shut the stream down to begin with. But anyway, I will stop talking. Carly, what do you got there?
Well, as everyone knows, we have a new partnership with Tiger Crankbaits, and they just recently released their newest little bait called the DMV Popper, and he is super duper cool.
He's
and
awesome.
They have him shown off on this cute little cut log, and I wanted to share it with our viewers so they can know what they're missing out. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure it's for sale online on Facebook as well, so they can hit them up on Tiger Crankbaits on their fishing Facebook page. But it's absolutely gorgeous, and it matches our logo perfectly. And so it's a special bait.
It's an absolutely special bait. And huge shout out to Tiger Crankbaits for coming on the show. If you guys don't know, the whole plan with the Patreon is for us to keep the show going with how much driving we do, gas, hotel, all this, the whole shebang. Patreon is a way that just really keeps us stable so we can keep pumping out content like we're doing. Our first goal, our biggest goal, just to keep the show alive through 2024 and beyond, is 100 Patreon supporters. Once we get that, that's a good base layer to where we can keep doing this at the rate that we're doing it. And then after that, our next big goal is 1,000. I know that's like talking about the big jump because we're starting a nonprofit. If you guys don't know, I'm on the Maryland Black Bass Advisory Commission. We get to help make laws and stuff for Maryland. Maryland and Virginia have said, like, yeah, clear. If you want to start stocking fish, we can work with you and make that happen. So one of the things the nonprofit I'm going to do, one of their big things is to help do supplemental stocking of our major lakes and rivers and places we fish in Maryland and Virginia. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a massive lake. It can just be a local small place. And we're going to help start doing that. We're also going to do stuff like restoration of boat ramps and cleaning up and taking kids fishing. There's a ton of things we're going to do with our nonprofit. But our goal is set a little bit in the future. But I think if we can, I think there are 1,000 people out there that really do want to see fishing really carried into the future, and we'll make that happen. But until then, we're going to worry about getting to 100 first so we can just survive till tomorrow. What so far have you found pretty incredible about this event?
Oh, man. So there are a lot of new people here, and I feel like doing these shows back to back for the last few weekends has helped me see that oftentimes the same people come to all these shows because obviously they're all local. Yep. But then at this particular show, I feel as though there are just more local, all handcrafted, all custom stuff, which just makes it like a little more special, which makes it worth more, in my opinion, but they're asking basically the same price, which is just pretty cool. And then all of these people you can reach out to and ask them to specifically and handcraft a bait that's going to match the hatch wherever you're fishing at home. And everybody, it's such a cool culture and community here that everybody is like, wants to know who you are and will you be back next year? Are you going to do this show, that show? I just think that's really cool. And I've never been to Augusta County.
No.
Fishersville, Virginia. I've never been out here before, and I really, really like it. So we're going to keep that on the radar for when we're looking for a house.
It's really interesting, too, and that's the fun thing about doing this. We've gotten to see some really cool places and stuff. Doug, who runs this thing, is just an absolute sweetheart. Huge shout-out to him. He invited us out to dinner after this, too, to the big barbecue place.
I'm so excited.
Everyone talks about. The other thing I wanted to bring up, too, was people don't know that your day job, what pays the bills for us, is you are a sign language interpreter.
I am, yeah.
What happened over there?
Oh, we saw a deaf guy over there that was trying to buy some baits over at Tiger Crankbaits, and they were like, oh, my God, Carly, come here. So they were like, he's deaf. And so I ran over, and I was like, hey, are you deaf? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, cool, I'm an interpreter. And then they were like, tell him that these baits are $15. So I told him they're $15, and he's like, wait a minute, why are you here? And I told him that I worked over here at this booth, and he said, are you live streaming today? And I said, yeah, we've been live streaming all day. And then he was joking. He was like, oh, are you going to interpret for me? And I was like, if you want me to, I will. But it's just really, really cool. We found out that he recently joined Doug's club with a co-angler who is also deaf, who lives out in D.C., who's actually a professor at Gallaudet University. And it's just really, really cool. He said it's been hard growing up fishing with a bunch of hearing people. And to have a co-angler or a partner angler that's also deaf is just going to be, he says, he's like game changer for him. So he's really, really looking forward to this year, like being his year, because he's just going to have somebody he can communicate with 100% accessibility. And he's planning on doing really, really well this year. So I'm excited to watch his journey if we can stay in touch.
Small world, it really is. That to me is what's so shocking about this, is how small and tight knit the community is.
Yeah.
It's like, and even your community, because the deaf community is small comparatively to other linguistic endeavors like the Spanish community, stuff like that. Like clearly, spoilers, some groups are bigger than others. But my point is that like Gallaudet. That's so cool that he's connected to that when it's like, it's just how all that stuff is interconnected to me is fascinating.
Right. And then he was like, well, do you know this person? Do you know that person? Do you know that? Because it is really a small community at the end of the day. Yeah. Because I probably have, like, my coworkers, since I interpret phone calls, we have 300 interpreters on it at a time, but that's for the entire country. That's for the entire United States. And so, like, we all know each other.
Did Doug know sign language?
No, he's just gesturing.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
Just teasing him.
This was something new. It's like
No,
I just
they've
saw
known each other for a really, really long time. So he said he's known Doug since he was like in elementary school. So
That's so crazy. 'Cause you talk about Jared and Ricky and people like this. It's just like they just mentor so well.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, like how like those people are so important, and they're really dying in the world, which is quite depressing, honestly. The one thing that we have been mentioning, guys, is yes, Carly will be doing more fishing this year. We're trying to figure out in what capacity. We only have so much time in our lives, but yes, Miss Bird wants to get into fishing.
I really do.
I'm thinking at first, it's either going to be she's going to get into kayak fishing first, or she's going to do boat tournaments with me first. We're trying to figure out the best plan of attack here. If she does kayak and fishing, we will get a color-coded kayak to the ones that she would like. And also try to get her something with like a motor probably so she doesn't die, because I can totally see her paddling and
I
also
appreciate
losing.
that, especially since you just got a torpedo motor to hook up to your kayak. Like, you would just take off without me, and I don't think that'd be very nice.
Well, yeah, but you could get some exercise on the paddle there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Mm.
What's wrong with a little bit of exercise? It won't kill anybody. What do we got coming up this week? Anything?
This week? I was trying to get through today.
Yeah, we got a live stream. I think you're a part of the live stream this week.
I am? On Monday?
I think so. It's either this week or next week. There is a live stream you're going to be a part of. I know because you got the horses next week. No, you got Coco next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Then the weekend after that, we have the kayak show. But I think you're gone that weekend. I think it's Harrison, right?
Yeah. Either way, you definitely need to get me out on the boat just so that I can get some reps in. I think that's it. Most important thing. I think the easiest way to get me fishing again with you, especially this year, is just to co-angler with you and
I really want to get him on the show. I see him over there.
Specifically because I don't have a kayak yet. So like it's going to be harder to get me set up for fishing kayak tournaments if I don't even have a kayak yet. So it would be easier to just join you on the boat and you could just teach me your ways and try to do a better job teaching than you have in the past.
I think I've done a very good job. I know I'm a better teacher than Vic because you won more tournaments with me than Vic.
I haven't had a chance to show off my skills that Vic has taught me.
This is also true as well.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple of or the other question here. That's my girl. Yep, absolutely. So with that
Do you have
said,
a guest coming on?
guys, I don't know. We can ask this guy. You want to come on the show?
I want to say something real quick. I'm actually watching y'all right now.
He's watching us right
since
now.
You're going to start fishing this year.
Yeah. Oh my gosh!
You see, and this is why you tell me it's hard.
Stop it!
Now catch a big one on.
Oh, I will. I will. Yes, sir.
So when you tell me life is hard as a woman, I want you to understand that no one has ever given me free shit for being handsome.
Look at this.
Okay, yes. Yep, she just got a bait.
Hold it up to
I swear to God.
the camera so they can see how cool it is.
I swear to God right now, I don't care what she says. Guys in the chat, please back me up on this. We're going to be a little sexist here. It is a lot harder to be a dude when all she does, she walks into any bait shop, she gets free shit. No one has given me anything for free in life. But yet she's like, it's hard to be a woman. She smiles and people back up the bricks truck for her. I mean, this is a crime, honestly. And I am offended by this.
This is going to go in my purse.
She just walked up and handed you crap. And then could you get him? He's right there. Could you go grab him?
Bring him back?
I want to ask him some questions.
Okay, I'll be right back.
So you go ask him and then just grab the chair and we can go do the spiel. I see him right there. Go run him down. Carly's got a special guest we're going to get on the show because honestly, I think it'd be a great story. We're going to be talking to an individual. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it yet. But anyway, we're going to keep talking here because this is what God gave me that I'm really good at, is absolutely talking into the blank void of my own soul. So we have a lot of fun things coming up this week, and I really just want to talk about like what Scott Martin did on the Okeechobee. It was absolutely fascinating to me seeing him crack 90 pounds on the Big O. That place is such a fun fishery. I only got to go there one time in my childhood, and that was way back. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago when that individual died in the Toyota series. He was a co-angler that got thrown from a boat. But anyway, she's going to go find somebody to come on the show. Anyway, where was I at? Sorry, arguing with my wife. It's a daily occurrence, honestly. Continuing on with work. No sound. Yep. Sorry, Williams. I was talking to my wife, and what I was saying probably wasn't great for YouTube, as she was trying to get a guest on for me. I was asking her to bring a guest on the show. Yeah. So what are you worried about? About how getting him on the show? Well, you know, she's right there. So I was trying to get Carly to bring a guest on so she could show off her abilities for everybody, but she said
I can't interpret and communicate with someone at the same time.
Explain.
I can't speak two languages at one time.
Isn't that what you do for your job?
No, I do one language at one time.
Then how does translators work?
I don't think that's why people are here on Fishing in DMV
Sorry.
to learn about how translators
I thought it was
work.
fascinating because I was going to try to get him on the show.
That's a conversation.
Yeah, no, I just thought it'd be interesting to get him on the show to talk about his story because I thought that'd be kind of fascinating. Anywho, we got back to the Big O where we're talking about Lake Okeechobee and like how that fishing has absolutely changed down there. But I think Ricky really talked about that extremely well during his conversation. So really, I'm just going to say, like, do we have anything else we want to talk about before we go on a break?
I have run out of things to say. So stay tuned, y'all.
Guys, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We're going to be back at 3:30. We're going to be back at 3:30 where we're going to finish up today. I'm going to adjust a couple of things right here. So the final segment of the show. Come on. All right, day 1, part 3. Boom. Perfect. So part 3 of the show, we are going to start back up at 3:30. So that's only 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's coming up.
And then we're going to be back. I'm going to change out the backdrop of this bad boy here so we actually have that. So William Barnes, I know we got 9 people here. Go to the bathroom, whatever you got to do. We will be back shortly. I'm going to go grab our last guest who is over in his booth. He is busy selling some great merch. And so we'll be there shortly with our last guest of the evening. Stay tuned. Why did you launch him 80 feet
You told
in
me
the air?
to boat flip him!
I didn't tell you to launch him 78
I
feet
flipped
in the
him
air.
in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it! You said boat flip him!
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here, because I don't expect anything.
Yeah, testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Carla, she's gone. We're gonna have to grab those people at some point. Okay, awesome. So guys, we are here. We are wrapping it up for day one. We got Jared. We're gonna have just closing thoughts with Jared real quick, and then we're gonna have these guys on here real quick. It's been a really good expo. I've learned a lot. Definitely, I want to get more into trout fishing. Definitely talking about that more. Never going to get away from it. But example is I've already talked to an electric boat series, 2 different electric boat motor only series. I'm going to have them on. I'm going to cover their tournaments. The Richmond Crappie Club, I'm going to follow them this year because I love crappie fishing first off, so I really want to do that as well. And also with the crappie thing, so many of the crappie techniques are transferring over to the bass world, like forward-facing sonar, putting trolling motors on your power poles, which is really cool. So with all that said, I'm going to follow them. And I also want to kind of get into trout more. And I don't know a lot about it, so it'll be fun to be kind of the audience and learn about that. I have 2 questions for you, but part 1 is, what did you think so far about the show? And then I can get into my second question.
Yeah, so does the second question have anything to do with trout or no?
Yes, it has something to do with trout.
All right, so I'll wait on the trout comments because I've been thinking about trout too because it's been one of the topics.
Let's start with trout. How the hell did you get into trout fishing? Because I never experienced trout fishing as much.
That's a great question, and and it's so funny because I'm smiling because there's been fond memories. So you get into it because it used to be a trout season in Virginia. And so just like deer season came in, and everybody can relate to it's almost, and you've shot some nice bucks, it's almost as much fun leading up to preparing for the actual hunt. Mm-hmm. And in case of trout fishing, when it was a season, you had a trout, you had a date and a time that it opened up, and everybody's lined up on the stream. And when the time hit, you casting all these lines in, and then so your window was small. But now it's a year-round stocking program. But trout, for me, when I was younger, it was a season. So in other words, you would hunt, bow hunt October, November, muzzleloader, rifle, and then you might bird hunt. And then you typically trout fish, February, March, April. And then being baseball guys, coaching, you playing everything, it was, you had a season of that. But then my fishing was then smallmouth on the river, canoeing, wading. But it was a season for me. And then I remember Dad going with him and his buddies down in the valley, to fish some of these streams. Mm-hmm. And whether you're spin fishing for them, using rooster tails or, trout bait, different things, cast masters, or you're a fly fisherman, and that again, trout is a whole another area that, again, there's no wrong way to do it. Whether you're fly fishing, top water, streamers, tying your own flies, there's no wrong way to do it. But you're chasing the trout, so you're more of a stream, fishing streams, moving water, wading, bank fishing. You could take that up into the mountains where the natives are, but it's just a different niche, if you will. I got into it, with Dad, and spin casting first. Then he put a fly rod in my hand and practice casting in the backyard. Got it into a little bit of fly tying, but just a different way to fish, chasing a different species.
When I think of bass fishing, I think the one way they're able to make their money is tournament fishing, and we talked about this with different demographic niches within fishing. That there's so much money in the bass fishing world. Like you look at ICAST, and that's basically carried by bass fishing in general. Even though you do have saltwater categories, things of that ilk. How big is trout fishing when you don't have tournaments? It's just catch and take, right? What is
there's
the
a catch
allure?
and take. So that's a great question too. When I used to teach outdoor education, I would talk about different species of fish. In other words, like the largemouth bass on a lake and its environment and habitat, and catching a nice big largemouth, let's say, versus a smallmouth in a river on a stream. Now smallmouth is going to be more aggressive, or any fish in a river, because the bait's moving. They got to be reactive. If they're going to eat, they got to be aggressive. And smallmouth, we all know that can be addicting. Well, the trout, the way I like to explain a trout, and I won't talk to the stock trout so much as a native. You get a native brook trout that's up in a stream that might only be 8 to 10 inches, that you got to figure has been born and raised in that little pool of water its whole life. And so it's more of it's the idea is you're fishing for one fish, to catch one fish in a pool of water that knows that water better than anybody. So it's almost even more of a stealthy type of catch. And so catching that 8 or 10 inch brookie in a native trout stream, like it's more rewarding, I guess, based on the fact that it's so hard to do. Their eyesight, the clear water. I mean, there's just so many. It's not an easy thing to do. It's definitely different. I hear what you're saying. It's just different. I don't know how else to explain it other than it's a different catch.
Because that's the thing, is like when I always thought as a person that's not really mature on the trout subject, I always think of a guy that he shows up to the thing with a bucket, he puts some corn on a hook, he casts it out, some power bait, and he just sits there.
Right.
And that's not all the trout fishing world.
Correct.
And I look at it, and everyone's like, well, and it's funny when you go here, it's like, well, do you like trout fishing? Do you trout fishing? It's like, honestly, no, because one is I wasn't introduced to it, but it's like, what is there to talk about?
So,
if that makes sense.
Yes, and I think my dad was a great mentor for me, and the idea where he was catching trout, what he described to me is like, too, when you think about depth, so you got a trout stream, well, you also have depth in that water too, and that trout might be laying down in a depression at the bottom, so you've got to get it down, your lure down, so you have a drift, and you've got to get it down deep in front of that trout's face for it to eat. Or if it's in, and so the other cool thing about trout fishing, it helps you to learn currents, eddies, the rapids, the features of a rapid, current lines, slack water, the back end pools, and just so it's like feeding patterns, feeding windows. Some of it is sight fishing, like with polarized glasses, being able to see in. There's stories of guys just simply not going down and casting right away, but kind of staying back and watching for a trout that you look in there, although it's crystal clear, you don't see anything. You say there's no trout. But if you're patient enough and watch, you'll see a trout come out from a rock or a hole and take something and then go back. And so you're like, oh, there it is. And then so you're actually fishing for that one trout. So I would say, too, I would challenge fish in their habitat and behavior in the water, fish eating. Like, there is a lot of similarities between depth and presentation and retrieval and all those things. And you've heard today, too, people talk about match the hatch. Match the hatch. That phrase comes from trout fishermen, fly fishermen, whatever that hatch happens to be at that period of time, and it's the forage that the fish are eating. So whether you're talking about a trout in a fly hatch versus bass in a, herring, blue herring, or a crayfish, it's the same concept. So it's all that's where I think your similarity is in the sport.
That is interesting. And Fish Hawk opened my eyes to this dead drift too. When dead drift comes down there, first off, talented kid. Really enjoy listening to those episodes. And he goes to like this, and we were going to go to this crap. It was in Richmond. It was like this wine and fly tie thing. Yep. And then I started reading that. It's like, this is big.
Yes.
Like it. And I always think fly fishing. I think Montana. I think Colorado. I don't think here in the Shenandoah Valley or West Virginia. And I don't know. It's something we're going to do more about, because I just personally want to just get my literature up on that as well.
And the interesting thing, too, so on Friday before coming down here, or Thursday, Barry Rudolph, whose son used to play baseball with my son, he came back in. He's retired. He has fond memories of fishing with his father and grandfather, fly fishing, or trout fishing, and he's going to get back into it. And it's kind of cool that now that he has time, that he's retired, he's going to get back into trout fishing. And he came in, to gather some information about Virginia, West Virginia, where to go. And that's the same thing, too, where to fish. Like, those that are doing it kind of know it, but there's people that want to get into it. Where do I go? And that goes along with what you've been talking about in fishing the DMV, all this water. There's a lot of water out there. And that's what we found in this area. It sounds like this is a big trout fishing area.
When you took the boys out, do you have your own pair of waders?
Yeah, so waders are hard to come by too. Like
it's another thing. Like, okay,
that's another thing.
How do you get waders?
And I had struggled. Like, I had waders. I've grown up with waders, but my waders, I sprung a leak and I had a hole in them. And so back last year, so I had to get a new pair of waders. Well, when you're only 5'9" and you're round, you're fat, like, it's not like trying on a pair of shoes or boots. Whether you go with hip waders or chest waders, so getting the right size wader. And there's different styles as far as going into a boot, but that is, and you don't need them. You can trout fish without those, but that is it, and it's just like bass fishing, where between your waders and your vest and your fly rod and your gear, I mean, all that stuff. You can be as simple as you want to be, or you can be as complex. You can spend a little money or a lot of money.
Yep.
and it's but it's all again the chase of the fish.
It is the chase of the fish. Guys, so here's the plan. I was gonna have another guest on, but I'm thinking just because it is 3 p.m. on a Saturday before Super Bowl Sunday, I'm gonna try to get that guest on tomorrow morning if he is still here, hopefully. Otherwise, we'll make it pre-recorded just because I can check with the algorithm and stuff. People are kind of like tuning out right now because it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday before the Super Bowl. Yeah, 4 o'clock. So, and I know my audience. So what we're going to do, we're going to start tomorrow morning bright and early. We're going to get things going here. We're going to have some Trout people on. We're going to have a couple more Expo people on here. I'm going to get the schedule lined up so we can actually bang that out. Please, if you would like, please join us on Patreon. It really helps us out. We are getting closer to our goal. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time on Fishing the DMV. And we're going to go bye-bye.